All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the the channel. My name is Next Testimony, um, and today we're going to establish a new Roman Empire in Rome Total War II. Sorry, Rome 2 Total War. And if you're just tuning in uh, via live stream, I welcome everyone, and also if you're watching this after the live stream is taking place, welcome to you too. Hope we all have a good day. And once again, I had asked that we just keep everything in the chat civil, and so that way we can all have an enjoyable time watching me play, as well as if you guys have any decision-making decisions you want to influence me to make when working on our empire. I would very much like to hear any suggestions you might have. So, right now, the two choices that I was going to have that I thought you guys might find interesting in this game is playing as either faction of Rome or playing as the faction of Sparta. Which, if any of you have a sizable knowledge in history, or even just a little bit of knowledge in history, then you'll most likely have recognized both of those factions as different nations that were in history and were major players. So for now, though, I think we are going to start with Rome, and then if there's interest, then we can go over to Sparta if you guys want me to come back to it. If any of you don't know what the Total War series is about, it is a grand strategy style game where you man troops and manage settlements over the campaign map, and that's a turn-based setting. And then after when you enter battle between two armies or multiple armies, because sometimes it's not just two, then at that point you go into a real-time battle where you're commanding units of troops that are all represented by the cards. So, hey, Arcanic One, nice to see you again. All right, so for this one, I think we're going to go with the House of Julii out of the three factions, which are Julii, Junii, and the Cornelii. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope I am. But so, to give just a short amount of history on each of these factions within the Roman faction, the Cornelii are linked to I'm sure you're not that bad, Arcanic One. But the House of Cornelii are related to the Scipios, who in history are well known for one of their members of the family and he is known as Scipio Africanus. He's the one that beat Hannibal outside of Carthage, which led to some very interesting results of I think it was the Third Punic War. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure if you tried it again, Arcanic One, you probably could. You could probably get past it. So, and then the other two houses, Junii is known for the, I think I'm pronouncing it correct, the Brudii family among them. And that is in, if any of you know sorry, tongue-tied. If any of you know of the play by Shakespeare about Julius Caesar being assassinated, the term "et tu, Brute," which is Latin for "and you, Brutus," or I think it's "and you," or it's "you too, Brutus," in kind of like a question to one of the members of Brudii household, because he took part in that plot. So that's where they kind of pull from this faction in terms of the game. And then the House of Julii is well known for being ones that sired the Julius Caesar, especially Gaius Julius Caesar, as you can see on the screen there, who became I believe it was the first emperor of Rome. So, and we are going to put this on normal, just for a relatively calm game. That way we don't get demolished in the first 3 turns. That has happened. But we'll see how it goes. And I believe there's a short cutscene, so I'll stay quiet once I hit start campaign.
You are at war with the Etruscan League. March north and capture their territories. This will allow you to consolidate Italia and ensure the safety of Rome. You must wage war if you hope to extend your dominion. Syracuse and Carthage own territory in Magna Graecia. so conflict with them is inevitable if you wish to expand across the Mediterranean. Otherwise, they may prove useful allies against Etruria or the Gaulish tribes to the north. Come what may, Rome will triumph.
Alright, so that was just our military advisor giving us some starting advice for the campaign. We don't have to accept, but we don't have to follow, but it is beneficial, at least in these starting stages. So we'll see how it goes. And then it looks like we have our first mission was issued by the Senate of Rome. So whenever you start up one of these campaigns and you are commanding both not only the military of a faction but also the economy and production and trade. So the faction will usually provide a couple objectives that you think are good ideas for you to follow, at least until you get your feet wet and decide to take your make decisions. Sorry, for yourself, basically. But for now, let's see. We are at war with the Etruscan League, so some of the major players, as our advisor already mentioned, are going to be the Etruscan League, and then this is the peninsula of Italy, or Italia back as it was known in Roman times. And there's the Greeks to the east, there's to the south another set of Greek colonies, and then Carthage to the west across the Mediterranean. So for now, I think we are going to try and take on the Etruscan League because they're, I believe, the only ones at war with us. So if we just go into our diplomacy tab, which is marked by the olive branch and the sword, we can see a list of different factions as well as where we are in the world. So with this, you're only able to see the known factions as it says there. And as you expand into the world and meet new factions, the list will increase in size. Right now, it looks like we have two different factions that are kind of neutral to us. And whenever they're of a certain standing, whether it be they are neutral or hostile or unfriendly or any other standing, there will be certain factors that take place based off of your actions as well as actions of their own faction or other factions that influence the total value, which determines their standing with you. And this works between the AIs as well as the AI and the player. So in this case, they're neutral, but they're leaning towards the more hostile side, or at least unfriendly, due to a different culture. That's our. I'm gonna butcher these names, but I'll do my best. Ardieli? No. Ardia. Yeah. And then we have another one, which is Athens, which I'm sure most people know who Athens was in history, at least in terms of uh, what they they're one they were one of the major um, Greek cities that was known for a lot of diplomacy. Yeah, Organic One. I think that might be the correct pronunciation. Not sure. Um, so with Athens, they were known for their diplomacy and uh, they were known for being at least at least in their eyes, they would think, to my knowledge, that they were the first democracy in history. But we'll see how that goes. um, and then we have a couple factions that are unfriendly or hostile to us. And as you can see, Epirus, the Etruscan League, and then Carthage, um, they're all in the red due to different factions. So yes, VMAs. Carthage is actually the nation that Scipio Africanus, um, their household came from. They were one of the great houses of Carthage. Oh wait, I'm sorry, Scipio. No, I'm thinking of Hannibal. Um, Scipio was Roman, not Carthaginian. Sorry. um, yeah, they tended to do a lot of scorched earth kind of tactics. Yeah, yeah, Arcanic one, definitely. Um, I mean, it's kind of true. So the Carthaginians were, at least before the Romans came along, as Arcanic one pointed out, um, uh, they were a major trade power, and they also were a fairly large military power as well, both in their army as well as their fleets of ships. And that will lead us to who they traded with, which I believe was also the Greeks to some extent, because uh, they're not Greek in origin, but they are from the same kind of family ethnic tree as um, as the Greeks, at least in my knowledge. I could be wrong. So, um, and that leads us to Epirus, which will also be a direction that we could take our campaign. Then, as I mentioned earlier before, there's the Etruscan League, which they are definitely going to be one that I'm going to have to deal with right away, because we're currently, I think they're on the defensive. I don't know how many armies they have, but since they only have three provinces, as you can tell from what is highlighted white, um, they are not too strong, and so I want to prevent them from getting any stronger while they're fighting with me. Plus, we also don't want them to take Rome. Is Rome. And then, let's see what else. Then there are a couple of different other factions. 3 of them being Greek factions. Sparta, as I mentioned earlier. And then there's the city of Syracuse. And then there's also Acilia? Yeah, I think that's correct. Which is also a Greek colony on the western coast of Europe. Well, western coast of the Mediterranean. And there's one more, which is a Gaelic tribe, the Veneti, I think. So they all seem to be neutral with us, at least for the time being. So for now, I think we will concern ourselves with the Etruscan League and make plans from there. Unless anyone has any ideas of what directions we should go, we could easily, well, not easily, but we could make plans to make peace with the Etruscan League and try and go a different direction if that's what you guys want to do. Otherwise, I'll just do my best to give you an enjoyable experience as we play through the game. So. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, because the Total War series has a pretty big reputation of being fairly in-depth in regards to a lot of different aspects, not just the military ones. So.
At your command.
So this is where the army is, for those who haven't played this game. In this UI for the HUD, it's going to list all the different units. So we have some ones that are, these are not quite the professional Roman legions that we think of when we think of Rome, at least in terms of the cohort system. That was instituted later on, which will happen in the game. And we'll get to see that kind of come to fruition through our own technology tree that we can research through, as well as buildings that we can build and then recruit units from them. So the units that you start out initially with are more of volunteer soldiers. When Rome was in its Republic era, they were primarily a volunteer-based military, and so most of the troops provided their own arms, armor, mounts, and most of them tended to be from wealthy or lower class citizens in terms of the historical setting back then. So, and then we have some veletates, as well as levies of spear throwers or javelin throwers. And we have the general himself, which is the current faction leader, and they have a series of different. I should back up for a second. In each of the Total War series, the faction leaders and faction heirs, as well as any generals that you recruit for a point, will have certain stats on them. And those can be improved through different ways, which I can detail later to go. But the three primary ones, at least in terms of Rome 2, are zeal, so a general's resolve in combat, and this benefits him. He has high zeal, he'll be better protected against assassins or other agents of other factions. Cunning, which is primarily related to commanding troops. And they primarily around. Oh wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the one that is based around agent actions, and then zeal is the one. Are both of those? That's interesting. I've played this game for a decent amount of time, and I guess I never was able to tell the difference between the zeal based and the cunning based actions for different agents. Oh well, you live and you learn. So, and then the third one is authority, which it does affect agents that are based in that stat, but it also, as you have more than, I think it is when you have 4 or above of any one of these three stats, it gives you bonuses. Like in this case, the authority 4, which he has, gives a plus 2% chance of wounding enemy agents in self-defense, as well as a plus 5% increase to the size of the commander's aura of influence, which is basically whenever troops are within that on the battlefield, they will have a morale boost. So there are a lot more things that I could go into about just the army side of things, and I definitely do want to get into them, but I don't want to overload anyone who's not familiar with the game. So for now, I think we'll just keep moving forward. In terms of different unit types there's infantry, there's archers or ranged units, there's cavalry. I always mess that one up. And then there's siege units, and then the last category is special units. In one instance, you could think about special units being like the Carthaginian elephants that they used back then as war. They would put platforms on the backs of the elephants. They would have one driver, and then they would have also archers on the platform, or in this game at least, it's portrayed as a box on top of the back of the elephant. But I think there's more detailed depictions of it if you were to Google it. So But anyway, there's plenty of different ways to interact between the different unit types, and there are special exceptions, but most of the time, infantry will beat cavalry, sorry, and then archers will kind of be in that middle ground, or ranged units, not just archers, because there are slingers as well as javelin throwers as well. And then the cavalry will usually beat the ranged units, provided they're left unprotected. Let's see. And we can see different information about the other types of settlements that are in each town and region. So in this case, you can see the greater region of Italia, and there's 4 different settlements. There's the major provincial capital, and then there's the minor settlements. In this case, Rome, or Roma in the Latin, is the provincial capital. And then there's also Arimnium, as well as Badathari. And then down here is, I went past it, is Neapolis, which is owned by me. And then the other 2, as you can see, are the Etruscan League. So whenever you click on a settlement, there's a lot of information that comes at you, but primarily you're wanting to make sure public order, which is this icon right here, stays in the green, that your authority stays near or at 100%, and then your income for that settlement stays also in the white or out of the red, put it simply. But there are a lot of different things that can influence that as the game goes on. But for now, we're going to focus on getting some more troops, and then starting a siege on one of these 2 Etruscan settlements.
Ready for battle.
So we could either hire some mercenaries, or we could recruit some of our own units. Mercenaries tend to be more expensive, but they also are pretty well trained. Excuse me. And then our own units, they can be trained as they gain experience. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the different units that you can recruit are able to be trained later on as you upgrade your buildings, or you can just have them gain experience through combat. So we're going to get some more of these Hastati, which are our basic infantrymen. What about... Now I think we'll get about 4 more. Just the way I like to play these games is stacking the deck in as much of my favor as possible in terms of army size, as long as my economy can maintain it, which is why I tend to play a little bit slower than most people, at least from my experience. But it does pay off in the end. So we'll get 2 more sets of Valetates or some Javelins, just to give us nice... Was that 16 out of 20? Yeah. Nice. I was going to say nice even and round number, but it's uneven, so oh well. And next we will work on upgrading our settlements that we have nearby. And those are going to cost resources, which whenever you're working on a settlement, there is the amount of denarius in this game, at least. There's different names for the in-game currency based off of which Total War game you play, but because we're playing in the Antiquity era, where most things were traded in denarii, at least when the Roman Empire was in control of most of the Mediterranean. I guess that's what the developers decided to choose for the overall currency. And then over here is the predicted income per turn. Turns last 6 months, so 2 terms in a year, and there's different seasons that will influence army movement, crops throughout the area, and then also food supplies as a result. Which brings us to our next thing, which is food surplus. Your food amount, as long as it's above 0, is usually going to be fine for the most part. But I found that it's always been good to have a backup, or a surplus rather, of food in case of certain events that will occur over time. And those can be anything from famine, disease, the occasional rebel army that comes up because they aren't happy with what's going on in their particular province. So they decide to make it even worse by attacking trade routes and cities. And then also enemy factions, if they move their armies through the region, they're going to take some of the food, as everyone has to eat. So yeah, I know, Arcanicon. There's certain things we can do to help against that. So, but it will happen eventually. Anyway, back to our settlements. There's different details that you can get into including like garrison, which is provided by different buildings, as you can see. Um, there's open, undeveloped land, which then you can expand into with your city, and you can actually see it reflected on the campaign map. Um, and then there's also the ability to see
Obedience to the rule of your
details.
faction is measured in public order. If unhappiness outweighs happiness and is left unchecked for a long time, it can lead to rebellion. Keep taxes at reasonable levels. Maintain sufficient food levels and garrison armies in settlements if necessary to stop low public order bubbling over into insurrection.
And that was another one of our advisors. Oh, I misclicked. Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't I'd have to say keeping them at reasonable levels can vary in this game, as well as all Total War games. Just because there's been times where a reasonable level can be you have them at like a 85% tax rate. Yeah. So as you guys can see, there are different types of breakdowns for like the wealth and income. There's taxes, slaves. There's corruption among the empire as well as each individual nation. There's what culture does to the public order. Um, if there's different cultures in the same city, that will definitely affect. Yeah, sorry. Uh, affect the what you call it, the public order ratio. And as you can see right now, our public order is doing pretty well, but that's also in the middle of Rome. So back then, all you had to do is throw some food around, throw some money around, and people were happy. Um, not quite, but at least when it comes to how the game looks at things, that's generally how it works. And then you can see that we'll have a predicted increase in public order, at least in this specific province, next term. So, and we'll want to keep the corruption level as low as possible in order to make sure as much wealth as we can get goes to our income, and then that will be able to allow us to go back and use that for projects like better military buildings, different shrines to different deities, which because there's plenty of different nations in antiquity that are in this game. There's all sorts of different deities and gods that you can dedicate shrines to and temples. And those will provide fairly decent, I would say, effects on what whether it be wealth, public order, training, even for certain groups. So then let's see. There's also certain objectives that we have for our current missions, but this doesn't necessarily mean that it's how you have to play the game. It's just suggestions, and then there's the finishing objectives. So if in this case there's military, economic, and cultural victories. If anyone has played Civilization, sure that will be very familiar. And so with the military victory, it's just conquer as many provinces as you can, including these different provinces. And you can just click on these different links that will take you to each one. So whenever you are trying to conquer a province, you need to take every single city in that province. You can't just take the major settlement or the provincial capital. I just want to check my trade and my finances, and then we'll get moving on things. Public order, growth. Actually, I'm going to lower, I think, taxes for now, just to keep everyone happy, or at least a little bit more happy. And then we'll try and secure some more trade partners to further affect our income. And see kind of just like a general summary on this tab of all the different breakdowns between expenses and all the different numbers related to our economy. So, and then there's also the technology that I mentioned earlier, but for now I'm going to kind of skip over that and we'll come back to it in a little bit. So now we are going to just go ahead and build some new buildings to get things rolling, and as well as secure some more income, increase public order where possible. There are some buildings that do have negative effects. It's not just all positive. So you do kind of have to weigh what you want to build versus what's needed for your army or navy. Excuse me. So versus public order and income. We want to make consecrated ground for better public order, as well as expand our Latin culture, because that will help public order. We want to build another level of garrison, which will further expand our city. And it will cost us some food, but as long as we're not in the negative, we should be fine, at least for now. So, and then I will work on the other settlement, Neapolis, or Bolos. Probably going to want to build that olive press settlement upgrade, because that's just all positive things. So I actually might do that instead, at least for now. And then also get our port upgraded into either a fishing port, a shipwright, or better a better garrison, as well as better ships for our military. And then there's an even better option of military wharf, which will give us even higher level ships, but it will cost us food. And then there's also a harbor for trade. So, but for now, I think what we're going to do is focus on the olive press, because that has a lot of benefits to it, so including public order, food, growth, a trade resource, which is the olive oil, as well as provides an additional garrison bonus to our minor city that's to the south of Rome, just in case. So then it looks like we're low on funds, so now we can move on to focusing on different kinds of different agents, as well as technology. So since technology has a lot to cover, and we won't cover it all in this stream, I'll just share some of the basic stuff. It's broken up between the military technology tree and the civil tree, and each one of these has the basic technology that we have to research before it unlocks the other trees, as you can see here. So what I like to do first is get our economy going. So I'm going to have our I'm going to actually go for the civil stuff first. We'll increase our wealth from each of the regions in our empire, and then, or fledgling empire at this point. And then also it will allow us to build a better food building for later production. So then this is our spy, who is primarily centered around subterfuge. If anyone's watched any spy movies or like 007 or any kind of those, you'll know exactly what they do. It's just on a more antiquity level, so no special gadgets or guns, but they have their own tricks. So, and they are treated in the game as separate characters that can join an army, but they don't fight. Or at least in the case of the spy, they don't fight. Although you do have to be careful, because if the spy is in the army when the army is defeated, then they will be executed by the enemy army. So for now, we're going to send them up this direction to spy on other settlements here, just to see. Want to set what's the settlement? I want to see what they have. Okay, so they've got some ships with some skirmishers on it, and they have a garrison with some cavalry, spearmen, 2 peasant mobs, and some slingers. Okay, it's not too bad. Oh, there's another enemy army. He was hiding in the trees. So for now, I think we've reached a good point of ending the turn, and then we will check back after the 6 months has passed. So it cycles through all the different factions in the game. Which, because this is an older game, it has a little bit slower time in comparison to the newer ones, like Warhammer 3 or Warhammer 2, in cycling through all the different factions. But it still went pretty quickly, I think. So, and at the beginning of each turn, there will be a series of messages that you get for different events that have taken place when you were not taking your turn. So in this case, this is a quartermaster's report for all the different troops that we built added to our army and which army they go to. There's also a building report that's very much like this for all the different settlements. There apparently is a war going on between Syracuse and Carthage, which is nice for us because we can put them against each other. And then there's also a war going on between Athens and Epirus, which is also good for us for the same reason. I'm just going over here because I want to see if Athens is allied with. They're not allied with anyone. Oh, but they're a client state. Okay. I was wondering if they were allied with Sparta. Sparta is at war with Epirus as well. Allied as defensive allies. Macedon. Okay. Good to know. Let's see. Wanted to be sneaky. I could build up an army next turn or two and then get them down, cross that strait to the city of Syracuse and start a war with Syracuse since that's their only city. Before the Carthaginians get there. But I might be better off just being a nice neighbor to Carthage and letting them take it while I focus on Etruscans and then other ideas for expansion.
Ready for orders.
Let's see, it looks like they some new units. Okay. Want to use this consecrated ground to dedicate to one of the 6 different deity options. So there's Jupiter, Minerva, Mars, Vulcan, Neptune. Sorry, wait. 5, not 6. So probably the one that I'm going to do is just looking back at I think I'm going to go trying to probably Minerva for now, just because, and we can convert it later if we want to, because it provides that plus 2% research rate which will be really nice. Technology tree. That will really allow us to churn out a lot of forces to expand both north and, well, not just north, but also in every direction. So we'll start with that for now, and then I'm also going to, I think I'm also going to make fishing port out of this harbor because it will allow us to have a lot more food. Famines and diseases in this game are fairly common, at least from my experience. But it will cost us a little bit of public order due to squalor. So then I'm going to send my spy to look at this army. Only 45%. Oh, and I don't have enough. I don't have enough money to make them sabotage it. Okay.
May I serve you?
Skirmishers, fine, spearmen, and a general. Okay. Well, they won't be a problem for too long. I'm more concerned about that provincial capital to see if they have anything. So, but till we get to that, just want to take a look at these other two cities that, or settlements that we have. They did make a military wharf win before I got a hold of the reins. That's a village. Okay.
Commander?
Oh, that's a Ferrarii. They are a special group of spearmen that are very well trained, and they serve as very good and mobile spearmen game for the Romans, but also as an early game general. Can't afford any other units for now, but that will change. I think for now we will.
Ready for orders.
We're going to take our fleet and we're going to blockade this port to prevent trade. It looks like they to fight me, so I'm going to hold off.
Set up a
Blockade. We might end up losing that fleet just because there was a lot of it's there. I didn't expect them to have that many, but
Ready for battle.
I'll reinforce them next turn. Or rather, I'll build some more ships next turn.
We hunger for battle.
Then
Make
going to
haste, men.
move the army in. It looks like there aren't any extra armies around this, so it's just going to be the garrison that we contend with. There's only a combination of 6 units, so it shouldn't be too bad of a fight for us. But
We take this settlement for Rome.
so, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, when you are making when you're making an attack or you're defending, whenever you enter battle in this game, it goes to a battle map, which is separate from the campaign map, and it's real time. But before the real time portion starts, there's a deployment phase, and that basically allows the attacker to make up their mind as far as what kind of conditions they want to attack in, and also what how to array their army before they go into the fight. So right now it is raining, and with these with these weather conditions, there's a chance that the range units may have a longer, looking at the word longer in that last sentence under the effects, but they have a higher chance to miss, and then they also have, it also has units take longer to recover fatigue, which is something that I'll get into as we, as we start battle. So, and what I'm doing right now is just kind of waiting out the different weather conditions to see if I can get a better set of conditions for that'll be beneficial to me. So, and it looks like we were able to get one where we don't have anything going on. So each banner here represents a unit, and you can scroll all the way down in, see the individual guys. So these are our starter units when it comes to the army that we've been given at the start. And we'll make do with them, and later on, once we get to the point where we can have professional units, we will be able to yes, Arcane One. We will be able to do a lot better in fights, but we will definitely do pretty well with the setup that I have been given. So, especially because we definitely outnumber the enemy, and that's the enemy over here. So there's a bunch of slingers, and then there are some horses. They're medium. My guys are a medium general unit, so I should be able to take them on without too much trouble. And they have some spearmen, and then two sets of peasants that they basically forced into the fight and gave swords. So these guys have next to no combat training, and they're literally just shields, which is generally how the AI hits them. But the other units will generally have smarter AI, so we will have to be a little bit careful. But
General!
so as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's different stats like melee attack and weapon damage, charge bonus, melee defense, armor, overall health of the unit, base morale, and then each of these are different different traits that the unit has for their excuse me, or there are different abilities that can be activated. So passive or active, if you think of it that way. But for now, we are going to work on just getting some of our guys into
Astati!
a little bit more of a battle line.
Melee troops!
I'm actually going to
Astati!
position these guys in a way
Ready for duty!
that will trick the AI into try and, at least I hope they will try and attack me, because visually there will be less guys in sight for them.
Astati!
So I can turn this into a pseudo ambush.
Melee infantry at your command! Missiles awaiting targets! Levies! Romans, ready for duty! Ready!
And so these red lines that you're seeing on the screen represent the ranged weapons, well, the range of the ranged weapons for each of my javelin men, and also the
Jupiter gives us strength!
the Astati, and I would say most of the mainline infantry, melee infantry that Rome is given will have not only a melee component to it, but each soldier has a set of throwing javelins, but the term that they have is pilum, where basically they'll throw them whenever the enemy's in range, and they will hit any shields or any infantrymen, and they'll bend upon impact because they're made out of soft bronze. Now, I think we're going to be fine, so we will go ahead and get this started. And
By Jupiter,
as you can see over their heads here,
for a battle.
as well as on the cards,
Men such as you under my command.
there is
Might you
a
feel any different?
eye that shows that they're hidden.
Sons of Mars. Good hunting.
And
Yours to command.
wondering if I can get away with
In the name of Rome.
hiding some of them.
Melee infantry. At the double. Ready, commander.
So unlike the older games of the Total War series, most of the newer games now, from like, I would say probably around Rome 2
Double time.
forward, they have setting where it's an auto run setting whenever you command the troops to go somewhere, which is really nice for getting them places quickly, but you also wear the troops down, which results in their fatigue meter to go from fresh to all the way down to exhausted, which is going to make them less effective in fighting when that comes. So it's not always good to run your guys everywhere. Fortunately, you can disable that feature in the options menu, and then you can also just hit the R hotkey or the toggle unit speed button down here whenever you make order. So let's see if we get them to move forward. Probably not. It was worth a shot. So
Brave Romans to a man. Double time. Orders. Advance and speed. Hold Romans all. Quick march. Velites. And the double. General. Sic Domine.
to help with the fatigue issue I mentioned earlier, I tend to, although it may be a little bit slower in terms of how I play battles, I tend to inch my army forward towards the enemy rather than large, uh, large jumps of distance, because the AI will adjust over time throughout the battle, based off of what you do, and if you give them a chance, they will take advantage of any openings, even on some lower difficulties. So
Quick march. Missile infantry ready. For Rome. Melee infantry at your command.
plus it's always good to give your guys room to recover from marching, especially at a quick pace.
Hastati. At the double. Missile infantry at your command. Order them.
Yes, I'm trying to get them to charge me, Arcanquin.
Roma Invicta.
Generally, how the AI works, at least from my experience, is that if you are you're the one with the larger army and you're the attacker, the AI is just going to sit back and say, all right, I have all day, come and get me. And it's going to be your troops that are going to be fatigued or potentially shot at from range, and it's just going to be worse off for you. But if you convince them by hiding your troops or by arraying your troops in a way that makes your army look smaller, then the AI will potentially think that there's a better chance than it originally determined. So
Sons of Mars. At speed. Melee infantry.
the other thing you can do
Double. Hastati.
is set up your units so that you can
In service of
lure them into
Happy to serve Rome.
what is effectively an ambush.
General.
So
Forward. Riders at the double.
also you'll notice that I just auto-corrected, or not auto-corrected, but I self-corrected when I ordered them over here and then wanted to prevent them from charging or running through my lines because they won't think to do that on their own. So
Quickly now.
and there is friendly fire in the game between units, so it is very easy for these ranged units to accidentally lob a javelin right into the back of your units if you put them too close, or if you put them on a lower elevation than your guys, as well as if your guys are in melee combat. with the enemy. So what I'm going to do is I have these 4 units here, and I'm going to try and pull at least 1 or 2 of the enemy units to me, and I'm going to use my general as bait, basically. And most of the time, whenever the AI sees a general on his own, they will go for them. Because if you kill an enemy general, whether it be the AI doing it or you doing it, the enemy army will take a fairly significant morale penalty for the rest of the battle. So, what I'm going to do is order. I'm going to order them to start moving forward. And this is what I meant by I like to inch my guys forward, because it allows me to react accordingly as needed, basically. So. Most likely these slingers are going to try and hit my general with their... I think they have rocks. Awesome.
Oh, gods grant me quiet.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not going to be trying to pull their general, because they are a... Oh.
Our general is under attack.
There's already some slingers firing at my guy. So if I... Yeah. And they're moving forward. Let's see if I can't get them to take the bait. Normally, 34 guys, or sorry, 39 guys, would not be a good idea to charge into an army of, say, like, I think around the number was 600. So what I'm going to do is pull back. I did take some casualties, but it does mean that I will be able to drag them into a better position for me than for them. Now, the enemy general is not going to play a very smart move, and he's going right for my guys. And whenever you see a white flashing banner, it means that they are going to run away, or in this case, just all get slaughtered. And you can see the horses running away. So now, the enemy has the debuff, because their general got killed. What I'm going to do is sneak these guys here.
Missile infantry at your command.
And I'm going to have them get some additional range backup. And I'm sure some of you have noticed that on the cards down here, these two units, which are these two, they are taking ranged fire from the slingers. So
Brave Romans to
a really good way of getting rid of enemy archers or slingers or any ranged unit, provided it's not also a cavalry unit, is to run them down. Because a man cannot run faster than a horse. I mean, just kind of the truth. So now you can see the spearmen are coming because
Our hidden units have been discovered.
they are trying to respond to me attacking. If I can pull it off, it looks like I can. That one poor guy is going to get most likely killed. Or not, maybe not. We're going to go ahead and move these guys out of the way and move our main force up.
Brave Romans to a man. Mars aid us, Hastati. Romans ready for duty. Victory for Rome! Hastati. Quick march. Sons of Mars. At speed. Velites. Double time. Hastati. Quick march. Our hidden units have been discovered. Engage! Melee infantry! For glory! Ready and waiting. By your command! Victory for Rome! Hastati! The charge! Ready and waiting. Rome is command to us all. Of the glory! Ready! Extempo! Now! Velites! Hastati! Jupiter gives us strength! General! Riders at the double!
Okay, it looks like those spearmen are running away. Took a lot of casualties, which is good. And those peasants are running. Those peasants are running. And we won. So we have an option here of either just ending the battle right now, or I can try and run down as many of the enemy units to inflict as many casualties and potentially wipe out the army as possible. Once you've reached this point, it's not possible for the enemy to win, so you don't have to worry about that if you continue. But if you want to save time, you can just hit end battle. So I think we're going to do that first. And of course, they allow you to save a replay of the battle if you want for posterity. So, as Arcanic One pointed out, the kill death ratio, how many we lost versus how many we managed to get, or how many to kill, is very high in our favor, and so in that, because of that, we got a decisive victory. And so now we have some options. There is 120 guys that we captured, and have a couple different ways that we can deal with them. So there are 3 primary ways, being occupying, looting, and then razing the city to the ground. Occupying is you don't gain any money, and it is the least amount of influence on public order. And then looting, you gain some money, a higher penalty for public order. And then razing, you actually gain the most money, and you have to deal with a pretty hefty public order for a little while. Not to mention, it also destroys all the buildings settlement. Which, I mean, if you want to start completely over with the settlement and work your way back up, that's a perfectly fine way to do things. But at the same time, it sometimes is better just to take the middle or the most beneficial option, in my opinion. I usually just tend to occupy settlements. So.
Ready for orders.
And it looks like our faction leader increased in rank. So we will be able to upgrade his ability to command troops, as well as some other different characteristics about him, which you can find on the details tab. Before I go to that, however, you can see that there's some plus symbols near some of my units, and that's basically to represent how many men are being replenished each turn, and then it also tells you how many turns until the unit is fully replenished, because they did take some casualties in the battle, and those numbers are preserved from the battle onto the campaign map. So, over to the general. Let's see. Excuse me. He has some different skills that we can choose from. He already has one that it looks like he had from the start, which is always nice. And then currently he has a very indignant wife, and that undermines his authority with his men. But it does also give a public order bonus because of higher military presence in the province that he's currently in. So, and then he's also got some traits. So, like, you've got dictator. That provides some nice public order bonus, some upkeep reduction for his army, as well as an additional tax rate bonus in the local province. And then he also has an additional bonus to gravitas. Gravitas is something that comes in when you start assigning guys to their when you start using that as a resource to increase your standing with the faction or factions within your nation. 1 second. So, the gravitas can influence a lot of different things, and it can have a very large effect on different characters as well as nations, um, because it can be used against parties within your nation, as well as against other nations and individual members of each of those groups. So it really comes in handy later on, especially once you start getting into the nitty gritty of the campaign. Let's see what else. He's got Born Leader, which gives him +2 authority, as well as 1 more gravitas per turn. Excuse me. And then it looks like he also is. He's also got a negative trait, which is Giving, which is a -3% tax rate to all provinces. That one is unfortunately one that we don't want, but once a trait is given, same thing with a skill, you can't undo them. So you really have to read the descriptions and read the effects of them before you decide on what to give them. That said, however, traits are not a bad thing, and skills are certainly not a bad thing either. There's definitely some influence that each of those can do on not only the character themselves, but also their armies and navies. So the let's see, what was that? Okay, that skill is bonus food and growth settlements, as well as it gives him the inspire ability. That's so now that we have leveled up our dictator once, or rather, not dictator, sorry, our faction leader slash general, we have a couple different options of how to implement and use that rank to develop one skill that will allow for a better overall character. And they're broken down into commander, strategist, and warrior. Which, if you'll notice, these colorations of these initial 3 cards are the same coloration as the authority and the cunning and the zeal from his characteristics. So if you have one that is on the lower side, then it may be beneficial to take that role for that specific general, or you could just use these to take an already great general and make it just even better. And so how these break down basically is commander will, 1 second. Okay, and we're back. I had one of my, or sorry, my brother was giving me a call for Discord, as I'm sure you guys heard. So, as I was saying, the basically these three different trees per se of rank upgrades will influence your character or influence your different generals and characters a couple different ways. For generals and also admirals of your fleets, you can generally see them as the commander tree will affect your army or fleet. The strategist will affect like your campaign movement as well as costs of how long it takes to build siege towers and siege rams, stuff like that. Um, and also how quickly uh, your army takes to replenish all their units' health. And then also like public order bonus, cultural conversion, and eventually leading up to an ability that you get and is some master tactician. For the ultimate ability for commander tree, it's a Spire, which is one that my general already has, but this is a group uh, ability as opposed to just a single unit that he's near. So you can also see that it also gives all recruits throughout the entire empire that are recruited one additional experience rank, which is very, very useful, especially when you have a large army that you just put through a fight and you lost a lot of units, or you lost a lot of guys in each unit, so um, they need to be replenished. What you can do is merge those units together, provided at the same unit, just multiples of the same unit, um, and merge them together. It'll not decrease the experience rank of those, but then you can then recruit more of the same units or different ones depending, um, and have them come into the army with already additional experience rank, which does help with catching up to the already veteran units that you have been using for very well, may have been like half the campaign already. So, and then the last one, warrior, is how good of a individual fighter your general is, as well as I believe it does impact your uh, bodyguard unit for him. Um, okay, no, it is just him, and then it also in other levels or other skills within that tree, it gives like this soldier one gives a charge bonus to all units. Marine gives a running bonus for all units in the fleet. And you'll notice that it says fleet only, army only, so you can't pull a fast one on the AI and have the guys in your fleet get the same charge bonus that your army does. which that does whatchamacallit, what am I thinking of? It is not applied when you land maritime units on land, which you can do in this game, as well as other games in the Total War series. And they can reinforce the army that you already have fighting. This particularly happens in like settlements that are being besieged but don't have a fleet keeping your fleet away from them. So, let's see what else. There's also a morale bonus for offensive battles. Same thing for defensive battles as well. And as you guys can see, it also increases general zeal. And this one, Dread, is actually a negative, but it's for the enemy units morale, which is really nice, just because your general is that scary. And then public order, as well as income from looting settlements. And then the capstone skill can also be for is also applies to melee attack for all your infantry units, as well as plus 4% ammunition for all of your units. That's both ranged and melee ones that have ammunition, which can be very, very helpful in the Roman faction. Just because, like I said, during the battle, there are a lot of Roman melee units that have, I would say, decent range capability. Which is also one of the reasons why in this game, unlike in the first Rome Total War, you do not get archers as the Roman factions, or the Roman houses within the Roman faction. And the reason for that is because most of your units already have range anyway. And also because the Romans historically didn't use archers that much. They primarily just focused on, I think they did use mercenaries for archers, but they didn't use their own guys that were trained bows because most of the range training was in throwing a javelin. Not to mention, I'm sure knowing the Roman idea of facing your opponent in hand-to-hand combat in battle being one of the most honorable and glorious ways to die, probably didn't think too highly of shooting someone and killing them from over 150 yards away with a bow. Personally, I'll take the bow any day because that's just me. But so, with that all mentioned, I'm going to give our faction leader most likely either the authority or the warrior / zeal upgrade. Yeah, organic one, definitely. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely I'll say this, having never been in real combat before, but having a family history of having soldiers in the family. I have heard different stories, and they I'm plenty glad to not have to have been a soldier at some point, just because I appreciate what like how they won and protect our freedom, at least here in the United States. Let's see. So I am knowing what we do now right now. I'm probably going to give the general that plus 4% melee attack will not be seen for a while, especially provided if our general dies. But it's very tempting to go after, especially with a slew of really nice abilities on the warrior tree. So I think I'm going to go with that. And then as you can see, there's actually ability, like there's chances for you to increase the ranks of each of these skills up to 3. So it's not just one and done. You can get a higher level of each skill that have additional bonuses, as you can see. So, and this warrior skill actually gives a Warcry ability when you get up to level 3, and I believe that one is a damage boost for the units in your general's area of influence, which is that blue circle that was around my general's bodyguard unit when we were in the battle. So, and I will have to work on getting him to higher level of, because although he's got some pretty nice list of effects already, I would like to increase them even more. So, they have used up all their movement, which can be seen over here. If anyone who has played if anyone has been playing or has played the XCOM series, as well as the Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Demon Hunters game that I streamed this past Tuesday, you'll most likely be familiar with the idea of action points on a board. But in this case, rather than it being individual guys moving, this is an entire army that has action points. And when you run out of the movement points, or sorry, the action points, your movement capability is done. So, and unfortunately, there's no way to undo a move once you do make that. So it is worth putting some time into thinking about where you want to go.
How can I be of assistance?
Which is highlighted by this yellow highlight that kind of goes over the terrain. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to see where it ends just because of the trees and stuff, but I'm not going to give up my fairly nice trees and detail of the map just to be able to see better. That's just me. And it looks like they had a vineyard, this settlement. Wait. Go ahead and expand that. next turn or the turn after, I will work on putting a recruitment field or maybe a town center. A villa or a villa / farm might be useful as well for getting more food. That's actually one thing that if you do decide to play any Total War game, particularly the earlier games, I forget if the Warhammer series of Total War games, as well as if ones in between this and those have food mechanics. I think they do, or at least something similar to food mechanics. But especially with these earlier games, the food mechanic is something that will drastically influence your armies, your provinces, growth, income, punishment for units, everything. Particularly if it's in the negative. Once you go into the negative, it's fairly difficult to get yourself back, unless you just stop everything and go only for producing more food, and even then it's going to be a couple turns, at least from my experience. So, but we are going to this. Yeah, it's still, guys. I just wanted to make sure.
What do you wish of me?
And we're going to send our spy
Moving
there.
unseen.
Just take a peek at what lies beyond the Etruscan League. And there is a minor settlement of Gauls. Latium. Let's see. Let's see. Ooh, he's an expansionist. Generally, as you can see here, the commanders of each, or sorry, the nation leaders of each faction will have different traits. And you also will have a trait as the player character, which is your reliability rating. If you start attacking allies, enemies, neutral territories, will have repercussions in the long run. People will hate you and will eventually declare war on you, and even in some cases, just flat out align with people they disagree with to take you out, especially in the later game. So it's useful to keep everyone as happy with you as possible for as long as possible, at least from my experience. In some cases, though, it's just hard to do, if not impossible, because someone who is expansionist, that determines their aggressiveness level, and the more aggressive the faction, the more likely it'll just attack you outright. Or, as it says here, more likely of when they'll just drag you into a war that you didn't want to be in. And if you decline to go into the war with them, it makes you look bad, not them. That's just because of how the game is designed. Because they asked for your help and you did the equivalent of betraying them. So, and then reliability is is based off of how much of a chance it has to turn against its allies, given the opportunity. So this is a faction that I do not want to ally with, given those two characteristics. Now, if I use a different example to kind of contrast that, let's see who has a better set of traits. Confident. Okay. Kind of a neutral. He's unreliable, though. Sparta is loyal, and they're confident. So it means they may be a little bit more aggressive, but they're reliable when it comes to backing you up. So if you go into a war, or if you're attacked by another nation, Sparta, just because of this individual character's traits, will most likely back you up and prevent you from going into a war on your own. Yeah, that is what we're going to do most likely. It's either that or I'm going to take down the Etruscan League and then immediately gun for them before they can make allies with anyone. That way I don't have to worry about them becoming a thorn in my side. So there is also the Insubras and the Liguria. They are oh, he's devious. That's like a almost guaranteed he's gonna stab you in the back. Well then. And he's confident about it too. Okay. I don't have line of sight on that other faction that I saw. So let's see. They are cautious and they're loyal, so they won't get into wars very often. Athens is unreliable, confident. Carthage is confident and unreliable. Epirus is unreliable and confident. Confident and unreliable. That's the devious one. It's another one I have to gun for. Because if I don't take him out, he's just going to make a lot of problems for me. Probably not going to happen in this streaming session, but definitely in the future. So, and then Acilia will most likely be a somewhat decent ally, although he is unreliable. So you do have to be careful with them. And these aren't, by the way, when I am reading these off as their different characteristics, these are not the characteristics assigned to them every single game. It is random. So they could be defensive one time and then be incredibly aggressive the next. That said, there are some factions that are more likely than not going to stay on a similar behavioral track. So one of those being Sparta, which is why I use it as an example, because I've just seen it be loyal and confident in a lot of games. Not always though. So So we're surrounded by a bunch of unreliable, except for Sparta, factions that all most likely want to take us down. Which makes things a little bit difficult for us. So, as they say, we have our work cut out for us. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get these guys to a positive friendship with me.
Enter, friend, and speak. We surely have much to discuss, and perhaps much to agree.
Because it looks like they're loyal and that they also won't drag us into any wars that we don't want. So there are times that you can get factions to, to join wars with you, or make them a client state where they have to pay tribute to you, or even contribute units to military endeavors. But a lot of the time, what you'll be working with is things like breaking or making gifts in terms of payment, as well as treaties for trade, and military access, and also inevitably declaring war. So what I tend to do is I tend to be fairly cautious about what I do with each faction. Because if you start just conquering willy-nilly, you're going to get a lot of enemies on your back. So, and you can see the likelihood of success is low for a trade agreement, so I'm going to take that off. I'm not even going to attempt it. Most of the time, the only time I attempt a form of diplomacy is if the chance of success is moderate or high. If it's low, I won't touch it. And you won't find out that it's that until you click on one of them. So okay, apparently they don't want a non-aggression pact with me. Something you can do to increase your chances of getting a good likelihood of success on different offers that you give is by giving them gifts, predominantly in the form of money. Sometimes they'll also ask for trade as well. Excuse me. But it is not always successful, and sometimes you do waste money. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let them sit for a little bit. We've already done the first turn, so we'll see what happens when the next turn rolls around. Probably also don't want to be in any alliances with me because I'm currently at war with a nearby nation, that being the Etruscan League. But we'll see. Okay, and they're still recouping. Though, to be honest,
Ready for orders.
once they get some movement back, I probably could just march on Ariminum. Looks like I'm out of money for this turn. Or not out of money, but low on my funds. So I'm most likely going to want to just end the turn, see what the enemy does. Peace negotiated. Area and Macelia. Okay. Okay, I completed that economic research. That's good. Someone took attrition. Oh, that's my fleet. That's another important thing about when you're doing naval activities is when you are in a contested sea region. It says here, or any. Actually, this applies to both sea and land. Whenever you're in a enemy or contested sea or land region, you will take attrition because your supply line for your army does not go outside of your own borders. And it causes you to lose men over time due to hunger, sickness, accidents, stuff like that. It's just all bundled up into the term attrition. So, but let's see. I am surprised that they did not attack me last turn. They very well could have. Oh, looks like my guys got a Praetorian Guard for a oh, what am I thinking of? For hireling, which they are. Hirelings are basically additional cards that represent individuals that are in the retinue. But that's what. Sorry. Retinue members represent additional retinue individuals that add to the stats of the character that hired them or that you gave to them. I forgot the name of it there for a second. Or declared. What? So, telling me you made peace, and in the exact same 6 months, you started fighting again. Give it a year. I mean, at least. Oh well. We'll settle that once we get there. I am going to have this turned into a food production place. And then I'm going to effectively spend that food, or spend one of that food, on making a larger vineyard for income, as well as public order. And now, just gonna move my spy over to double check that army.
There is more.
Still only 3 units. And the garrison is still 6 units. So, without further ado, actually hold that thought. I'm going to set up my research. That way I can let that continue without having to think about it during the battle. Tax labor, more main chain construction costs all regions. That would be nice. Let's look at the next one. Scholarship. Dignitaries, which are basically diplomats in the game terms, so that you can communicate more effectively with other factions, whether they be at war or at peace with you. And then iron tools. Let's see. Additional wealth from agriculture. A 2% less construction cost for all agricultural buildings. It also enables the slave trader building. Let's see. Just looking over this to see which path I want to go down, because sometimes you can be these paths for a fairly large amount of turns. So it's good to not have to swap around at a moment's notice. I think what I'm going to do is work on building this tree to gaining more wealth from both culture and I know that's just culture. Okay. That'll also make political actions less costly. Very useful. Yes, B-Maze, you did see cultism. In-game, it is beneficial for wealth generation as well as less political incidents or random events. Additional cultural conversion and building the Basilica of Minerva, which will help with research speed. As you can see, research rate is already 122%. I think that is because I made that that shrine to Minerva, but yeah, that is true. Let's see, what else can we work towards? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on building more agricultural buildings so that I can, one, feed my army and navy, and then two, have additional food from the resulting buildings that uh, I can build once I get to this improved irrigation. So
Ready for orders.
then I am going to take march it over to second to last Etruscan League settlement. Then at some point I will have to go after that settlement on Corsica, but we'll see how it goes. We may just be able to make them a vassal state once we get them down to one settlement. Sometimes that happens, other times they aren't as forgiving.
Laying siege to the settlement.
Turn.
All agreements are at an end.
Oh. Well then. You're at war with 3 different factions, and you want to end your non-aggression pact with me. I don't know about you, chat, but I don't think these guys are very intelligent.
All I ask is a treaty. I am not proposing marriage now, am I? There will be no Harridan mothers-in-law.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, I don't think he was. Also, hey Rachel, good to see you.
Wisdom should always be admired, even in small things. Let us hope today's acceptance is a great thing.
For now, we'll accept their non-aggression pact, and then we'll make the Carthaginians pay for it later. Let's see. Result of ruin or neglect, slums have developed in settlement. Which settlement is that? Ah, okay. Didn't...
My skills.
Oh, okay, it's that. Food shortage. Oh boy. Fortunately, that will be solved in, I think, 2 turns. But that is going to bite into my trade and, or no, my growth and my replenishment of my units. So eventually, if food gets low enough, it does hurt your, I believe it does hurt your army in terms of active attrition per turn. So it's really not something that you want to well, get involved with if possible. Okay. So let's take a look at this settlement. I know I don't have enough money to do anything in settlement because the hammer is not over it. But we can look at... oh. That is not good. That is a -6 food. Wow. Okay then. We are getting rid of that. Going to destroy that so that we don't have to deal with -7 and then consequently -5 food. Because, ouch, that's not going to be helpful. Okay. So we definitely got one. Definitely, it was a good decision to get rid of that slums because that will help improve squalor. And hopefully it will also help with the food situation. I think it should, considering, but yes, you can already see it. They're starting to take attrition. Or they will next turn, anyway. So, we need to sure to keep current army from abandoning us because of attrition. These guys are actually going to send them to Sentia, because that will hopefully replenish their it's not going to. Wait. Why are you guys going down there? Your settlement's up here. My army's out of reach. Darn. Okay. Well, I have a fairly sizable garrison, so I shouldn't be too concerned. But just in case, we are going to our army. Please get a couple different this building so that when they attack or move by the area, I'll be able to take a swipe at them. Okay. I'm gonna take this. He actually has better authority than my current faction leader. General's bodyguard.
Commander. Come. Fight
Some
for
units
Rome.
out because even 2 units made is worth more than nothing. So I was about to say, whatchamacallit, 1 unit in the hand is worth 2 more, or worth them 2 more in the bush, but
The overall happiness of a population is influenced by a
it
variety.
didn't make sense to me when I said it in my head. So,
We hunger for battle.
and then what we will do is we'll take care of that army later and kick these guys off the mainland. And for time's sake, since it is 6:40 Eastern Standard Time, I am actually going to do an auto resolve of this. If it had walls, I probably would have done it by hand, because then I would have been able to show you guys more siege warfare. But considering this is a minor settlement and does not have walls, I would just be walking in buildings on the battle map. There would be some fighting, but there wouldn't be as much as, like, it wouldn't as necessarily be as interesting per se, at least in my opinion, as watching, you know, a siege. So, unless you guys want me to fight this one manually, what do you say? Okay, we'll fight. Alright, there's fog, so we want to try and wait that out. There's no effects on that one. Sweet. Go ahead and start deploying your guys. So, as opposed to field battles, the main difference with settlement or siege battles, if they don't have walls. If they have walls, then there's another factor that will come into play. But I'll get to that when we do a battle with walls, because taking the time to explain it would not be very time efficient. But when it comes to any siege battle, there are victory point or capture points. And whenever you go to one of these capture point areas, there will be a circle that you need to position at the very least one of your troops in order to start capturing it, which is represented by the red icon changing slowly to white and then up to yellow, or watching the circle and the flag going up and then back down. And once it's done that, you'll have successfully captured that specific point. In much larger settlements, there will be a lot of these different points, but because this is just a small settlement, there's only the one main plaza. So, and I think some of you might have noticed that there's also a giant port here, or not giant, but there's a sizable port here. So if they had a navy, they would have been able to land troops right here and reinforce the guys that are on the ground already. And the same thing can be done when you're trying to amphibiously assault a settlement. Granted, as with any amphibious landing, you're going to take casualties, but it kind of comes with the territory. So, and without further ado, I'm going to these guys set up, and sometimes I like to take this a little bit more strategically, but because I know what I'm going to be facing, and I know that I don't have to worry too much, I'm not going to be as cautious as I was during the field battle. Primarily because there's little area for the enemy to deploy in, as noticeable by the pink line. And really the only thing stopping me from seeing these guys once I do hit start battle will be the buildings at most. And then it's just a matter of selecting units and telling them to attack. So, oh, it looks like they did have two guys, defensive skirmishers. Okay.
And today I see such under my command. All that remains then is to listen to your orders and obey. Prepare yourselves.
So what you guys just heard, there was the general addressing the troops, and he gives those little speeches beforehand. And in not so much in the games after this do they come up, but in the earlier games, basically from what I would say around Shogun 2 backwards, they had these cinematic widescreen, like zoom in of all the units, and it would pan down the units line, as well as zoom in on your general, and he would be talking in unique speeches for like a good probably 20 to 30 seconds while he was addressing the troops, and they were just really cool to watch before the battle. I remember them from the first Rome Total War, and it was a lot of fun. I don't know why they decided to take those out, but I figured it was just maybe they needed to do some sort of cuts or something like that. I don't know. But as an older Total War player, I do miss them. So, where are you going? Oh, okay. You're not actually going anywhere. You're just repositioning. Oh, you're gonna come out and fight me now, are you? Like the last time. Okay. I'll wait if you want.
Melee infantry! Jupiter gives us strength! At speed! Ready! Brave Romans to a man! Happy to serve Rome! Your orders! Ready, days! Missile infantry ready! Quick march! Sons of Mars!
Let's see. These guys, they're medium. Okay. Once we get further into the campaign, the unit descriptions will come in a lot of handy. Because if you see a medium melee cavalry, as well as like a light, they will not, for the most part at least, barring any other circumstances, they will not be able to stand up against a heavy cav unit. And a lot of the time, the later versions of the General Bodyguard, for every faction, for the most part, there are exceptions, but they will really hit home. They'll really hit with a lot of punch, and that's why I use my general as just another cav unit, because he's there for a reason. And if you get him to a really high zeal level, you can really do a lot without him going down. And it's only gotten stronger as the games have progressed. So, oh, you're actually moving forward this time. I'll have to bait you. Wait. Got some mobs. We have one unit of spearmen, slingers, more slingers, alt slingers. They all die the same way, as most men do.
Attack! Commander! Tribunus! Ready and waiting!
Yes, I apologize for it being very cryptic in the way that I just said that, but at the same time, this is a war game, so... And I'm actually going to do something that I don't normally do, and that is
Orders! Head quickly now!
really commit.
Melee troops awaiting orders! Romans ready for duty! Ready! Mars aid us! General! Advance at speed! Brave Romans to a man!
If I can take that general out, he is going to be in a world of hurt. Yeah, 40 guys against 160. Actually, more like 480. And that took about, each battle was about 60 minutes, according to what I set it to, so 7 minutes. Much faster than the last one. we still did a very high kill death ratio. Although this is still the early game, so. And because of siege battles, settlement battles, the way they are designed is they are basically a Helm's Deep battle for the defender. In that, even if you manage to see your guys escape successfully, which the only way they can do that is by having the battle end before you lose all of them, or have them escape across the map border, which is a ways away from most of the combat in most situations. Then the result will be, in the case of the defender, they're going to lose every single unit, as well as the commander, and every agent that's in there. So, siege battles are very, very important when it comes to if you can lure a bunch of enemy generals into an area and manage to take them all down, that kill is going to stick. It's not going to be a situation where they can just run away and then come back and have another banner full of armies, or another army full of men. So, but yeah.
We hunger for battle.
Military tradition. Sweet. So that actually brings up a really good point. Is the military traditions is basically the same thing for the army as the rank increase for the general is, in terms of upgrading their stats. There are plenty of really good traditions that the armies have, as well as the navies, and they're split in between 3 different no, I'm pretty sure there's more than than just these. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's more than just these, but these might be the only ones accessible right now to me because of technology level. So, but so like you have in the case of these 3, formidable fighters, it's a flat percentage increase to weapon damage for every army unit. That's both mainline melee units as well as cavalry, and also archers / slingers and all that. So that is always a good one to take. There is missile damage inflicted by all missile units, but that only applies to ranged units. So if they don't have a bow as their symbol on the banner, it won't apply to them, at least to my knowledge. And then there's engineering experts, where it enables the construction of medium siege engines, so siege towers, and I think it's possible that they have it enables stationary siege equipment, but most of the time you have to research a artillery workshop or something akin to that in order to get like onagers or catapults or ballista. In this case, I am going to go with the Formidable Fighters because I have a mostly melee setup with this individual army. And if, in the same case as what I was talking about with how generals and agents will die, as well as the army units, in siege battles, if they lose, at least in the case of defenders. Attackers, that doesn't happen, they just retreat. Although you still will take some casualties. But in the case of a army that has traditions in it, you actually will, every single one of those traditions that you have will be lost. With only one exception. And that is when you decide to re-establish that army by recruiting a whole new set of units and a general. And that can be pretty costly on your pocketbook. So it's generally not advised to let your armies die outright, but it does happen. So alright, so now we're gonna see. Okay, we're gonna take the soldier because charge bonuses are really nice, especially 10% one for all units. Sometimes charge bonuses can be the difference between a group of peasants outright routing or even killing off a not much higher tier unit, but like I have seen battles where a mob, like those peasant groups that we saw in the last fight, I have seen 4 or 5 of those take on one unit of Astadi, which are the for these guys, and they just got swarmed, and it was like watching rats on a carcass. They just died because the charge bonus was so effective. Generally, that doesn't happen because Astadi are a very good melee combatant, especially versus a lot of early game and even mid game or mid tier non-Roman faction units. But if the unit is already tired and they've lost some guys and possibly the general's dead, you can really take advantage of those stacking penalties, debuffs, and turn some of your weakest units into some of your strongest. But I think for now that is going to be where I'm going to call it, and I very much appreciate all of you coming up. And for anyone watching after the live stream, thank you for tuning in as well. And I look forward to seeing all of you on Tuesday when we resume Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Demon Hunters. Hope you all have a good weekend.